Welcome to the English Homemaker podcast, a podcast where we discuss all things home, a realistic but fresh view of homemaking from the suburbs of the south of England. I am your host, Alissa Evelyn. Welcome to episode 2 of the English Homemaker. Hello everybody, I hope you're having a really great day. Today is episode 2, but it's really the first proper episode where I'm going to get really into the nitty-gritty of a topic. The last episode was an introduction, and yeah, this one hopefully will be a bit longer and a bit more in depth. Today we're going to talk about the kitchen dance and good food and everything related to food, eating, diet, the kitchen, everything. We're just going to go for it. And I hope you really, really like it. Now, I totally appreciate that the subject of food can be super triggering for a lot of people. So I'm going to start with this quote from Morgan Harper Nichols, which I think is super important and relevant to any area of life. It is, words to repeat to yourself. I am open to learning from others while allowing my own journey through life to unfold naturally. Meaning, there is no hurry today to take on anything I'm going to say. Your journey is your journey. And especially when it comes to food, you need to find your own path through. And hopefully that will be apparent in how I talk about food and diet today. So food is such a big topic. It's something I talk about all the time with the mums at school. It's something we have to do every single day, 3 times a day. And people just get so burnt out on cooking, preparation, the kitchen. Doing the food shop can just become such an onerous task, and I hopefully will help give you some fresh ideas, inspire you a little bit today with a bit of how I do it, have done it, different ideas. I'm going to talk you through some of my favourite cookbooks, some of my favourite recipes, and yeah, hopefully this will be a really inspiring and uplifting, encouraging podcast for you all. So I'm going to start by talking a little bit about my history with food, what kind of foods I grew up around, what cooking and eating looked like in the house I grew up in as a child. I grew up very much in a family that really enjoyed food. We were always encouraged to finish our plate, and we had lots of different kinds of foods. But the strongest memories I have of food are always of trips with other family members, especially my grandparents. So my maternal grandparents were really avid gardeners. They grew a lot of their own fruits and vegetables, mostly vegetables. I have really strong memories of like a proper taste of a proper homegrown potato, and that being like slathered in butter on the table with some oven baked fish on a Friday night at my grandparents' house. On the other side of things, you have my paternal grandmother, who we call Farmor, and she is a wonderful Swedish lady who has so many strong like family traditions that she brought with her when she moved to England when she was really young and married my grandfather. And so we would grow up eating things like pyttipanna and ettsoppa mit fläsk and just meatballs and the amazing smorgasbord that we would have for Christmas. And it just really incredible food traditions. She would always mix in various different English things in there, so there was this sort of combination of both, but they would also grow a lot of their own things as well. One of the things that I have now also learned how to make is rennet bean chutney, which is a huge like family favourite. Both of my grandmothers used to make jam. Now I am the jam maker of the family, and they've sort of passed that tradition on. I finally wangled the marmalade recipe from both of them, and so I can make that myself. And it took a little bit of convincing for them to pass on their really, really special recipes to me, but I got them finally. I've got lots of other family memories as well. Some of my aunties and uncles, I remember going to their house once for a sleepover, and we had tomato soup from a can, and I thought it was the best thing that ever happened. And I think it was like a really rainy day, but I just remember being so amazed at how something so simple could be so delicious in just the right moment. And I also remember going to my other auntie and uncle's house for Christmas Day, and we would very often have a huge feast on Christmas Day, as well as Christmas Eve. With the Swedish lot, we would always have a bit of a double feast at Christmas time. And yeah, at Christmas Day, we would have these epic desserts. sweet foods were definitely favoured by my sort of maternal side of things, and like savoury meats from the other side of the family. But basically throughout, I have these really amazing cultural traditions as well as just family traditions when it comes to food. We all love food, and also eating at the table was something that was very, very encouraged, and I'm so grateful for that. I'm so grateful for a family that all knows how to cook and knows how to really enjoy a meal together, with napkins and with our own little napkin rings, and we would know how to lay the table in different families and how everyone liked to clean up at the end of the meal. And I remember my grandparents had like one of those dustbusters. I wonder if any of you remember those. They are just called mini hoovers, but dustbuster was like a proper thing that you like hung on the wall or behind a door, and we would like all argue about who would get to use the dustbuster at the end of the meal to clean up. So it was a real big family affair, big effort from everybody, young and old. And I just remember all of my grandparents in the kitchen, and it always being a lovely, warm space. And I definitely also remember my grandmother had an Arga in this like lovely Devonshire cottage that they had at the time. And it was a really physically warm place, this lovely cold stone floor and a lovely barn door. And there are just so many special memories, anyway, from my childhood. So the other thing that has really influenced a lot of how I cook is a lot of my travels. I've been a very fortunate woman, because I've been so many different places that have really influenced how I've chosen to cook. And I have, again, so many really strong memories of food from all around the world. Some of the strongest, probably first influences on me are going to France. We went to France a lot when I was a kid because it was pretty cheap to travel across at the time on a boat and rent somewhere. So we would do that, and we just would go to patisseries and have far breton and proper long French baguettes and quiche. And we would go get a hot chicken, which we thought was one of the most amazing special things in the whole world. And obviously like croissants and pain au chocolat. And there were so many strong food memories. It was definitely, we would go and spend our pocket money at the patisserie. And it was just, very, very fond memories. Then when I was about 22, one of the real life-changing holidays I had was I went to Greece with my mum, and we did a little bit of an island hop kind of visit, and it was incredible. It really changed the way that I looked at food. I really fell in love with Greek food, mostly because it's so heavily based on vegetables and fruits and a lot of fresh food, and it's just cooked in such a different way than I had been used to, and it really changed my world. It was also where I really learnt what actual coffee could taste like, not what sort of a coffee that had been freeze-dried was like, which I definitely didn't like and I still don't, but I had really strong coffee. There was also a lovely culture of eating in the afternoons, and it was just, again, it was a very strong food culture and very different than I'd ever experienced, and it was really lovely to dive in and really enjoy and appreciate it. At the time I was doing that, I'd also started my food blog. I'd probably been blogging for quite a while actually, and my food blog I absolutely loved. I was posting on that for, probably certainly every week. You can still go back, see some of those old articles if you go to alissaevelyn.blogspot.com and you go back in time. Probably lots of the photos aren't really there because the way it used to work was that they used to be uploaded to a different site. I can't remember why. Anyway, probably to do with storage and lack of storage back like 100 years ago. Anyway, then the food blog also really changed the way I looked at food. I got very experimental with things. I got really into various different healthy, I should say, quote unquote, diets. I tried lots of different things. I was introduced to so much variety in different ways you could cook, different grains, raw food, just so many different things. Then a couple of years later, when I was 23, I went and stayed with my great aunt in Australia. And that was a huge experience for me. Australians are massive foodies, and I also feel like they're way ahead of the game when it comes to new trends and things like that. So it's a really good place to go and visit if you want to know what's coming up next. They were so good at the time, which was 2011, at really good coffee, really, really good coffee, banana bread with a side of bacon, and it was incredible and very life-changing. I also stayed with many different people whilst I was there, mostly my great aunt, but I visited with so many different people. I got to experience like different bits of the coastline, and it was absolutely gorgeous, and it was nice to be around lots of foodies as well as myself. When I was there, I was also writing my first cookbook, which is called Healthy Breakfast Recipes, which I am not hugely proud of. I'm proud of the effort it took to get there, but it's kind of an embarrassing one to look back on, I think, because there's so many things I would do differently. Maybe one day I will make another recipe book, because I do love food, and I really do especially love breakfast. But yeah, it didn't have any pictures, it was self-published, and I was really proud of a completion of a project. And there are still so many of the recipes in that book actually that I reference and use all the time. Of course, one of the other major things that influences how I eat is that when I was 11 years old, I was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes. And throughout my life with type 1, I've had to eat in a particular way. So for many years of my life, and probably the reason I created a whole book of breakfast recipes, was that for about 6 years, I think, of my life, I ate only Cheerios for breakfast, the exact same amount of Cheerios with the exact same milk. And I think that kind of put me off Cheerios for life, and really desperately made me want to experiment with cooking. But yes, having type 1 diabetes really does affect how I have to eat, and does affect my choices a lot. I also went through a phase where I ate really low carb for a while, which I wouldn't really recommend to anybody necessarily. I think it was a bit of a reset, a bit like a kind of fast actually for your body. So it's probably okay for a couple of weeks, but I definitely pushed the boat on that one. I think we do live in a world of extremes, and whilst I've never felt like I was an extreme eater, I have gone through phases of trying things like raw food and super low carb, not for any other purpose than just to see how my sugar levels did with it and how my body reacted. And I don't think I ever pushed it too much. Certainly raw food did not last very long. I'm definitely a warm food eater, as I'll probably come to talk about in a bit. But I mostly ascribe to Michael Pollan's quote, which is "eat food, not too much, mostly plants." That does seem to work really, really well for my body. And anytime I kind of seem to veer off course and maybe try something different, like try being vegan or try going full ancestral eating, I always end up coming back to eat food, not too much, mostly plants. And that seems to kind of center me and center my brain back into where it needs to be and what actually works really well for my body. I think in today's world that we really need to get rid of any kind of should in the kitchen. Like, there's no we should do something. We shouldn't need to have a perfectly organized anything. We shouldn't have to eat in a particular way. We shouldn't have to cook in a particular way. There's no particular timings we desperately need to follow. You just need to know your body and how it works best. I really feel like everybody is unique, and we can't blanket say to everybody that everybody would be best being vegan or everybody would be best eating in an ancestral way. I feel like everybody is probably a bit of a mix of everything. I don't think there's just one diet that answers everything. I think everybody really needs their own unique, tailored thing. And whilst I think that is frustrating because you want to be told exactly how to do it and you don't want to have to make your own rules up, I think if you spend some time really listening to how your body reacts to things you're eating, it probably is quite simple. And quite a lot of you are probably already thinking, well, I think I already know what my body enjoys the most, what my body really thrives on and how it functions really well. And if you don't know the answer to that, you can definitely experiment, do elimination diets if you need to, just like work out what your body really, really likes. And it's taken a while for me to really get to grips with that, I think, because we come from this world of extremes. And I have tried being vegan and I've tried doing the ancestral thing, and neither have worked in particular, but there are parts of each that I really like. Like there are parts of raw food eating I think are great in the summertime, and there are parts of ancestral eating that I think are okay, but in definite moderation. And yeah, I just think certainly my microbiome is very unique, just as is yours. And I know what it really, really likes. So yes, there is no should. I want you to just sort of like get rid of that statement. And if someone online is telling you you should be doing something, like you should be making bone broth or you should be having a smoothie in the morning, take that with a pinch of salt and know that variation and moderation in your diet is super duper important. I actually also have this theory, and I want you to tell me what you think about this, that actually our body really thrives on having repeat foods, repeat meals. And I've seen that in my grandparents, where they would have this kind of rolling menu of sorts where they'd have basically the same number of dishes on repeat. And I think that means your body knows how to like break it down and use those nutrients better. I think if you keep blasting your body with new recipes and new foods and things like that, I think your body gets a bit confused and it doesn't quite know what to do with that. I think it likes repeat things. So what do you think about that? Do you think that's nonsense? I'm not sure. I kind of think there's something to that. Or maybe it's just that after a while, my grandparents have just totally realised exactly the foods that digest really well, that they really like, that keep them going, that they enjoy. Maybe it's just as simple as that. Anyway, the next thing I want to talk about is the kind of overarching thing in the homemaking community about slowing down and doing everything from scratch. And I want to spend a brief moment telling you that you don't have to make everything from scratch. I think that can be so overwhelming, a reason why people don't want to do that. There are some really good options out there in supermarkets that have been made for you. I think we have to be realistic about life. We have to be so realistic about how much time we do have, how much work is required in this world in order to survive, and how we don't all have time to do everything from scratch, and that is okay. Do not punish yourself for not making your own homemade crackers. Do not punish yourself if you don't have time to make cheese. There are really good options out there for both of those things and lots of other things. However, there are some things that can be made from scratch that I do that are really so easy and more nutritious and way cheaper if you do them yourself. So things like, if I come to the end of a loaf of bread, whether I've bought it or I've made it, I will put those last couple of slices in my Vitamix and blend them into breadcrumbs and shove them in my freezer for the next time I need breadcrumbs. That is a super easy win. Then something like homemade granola. I love making that myself. It's so easy just to like mix some butter and maple syrup together in a pan, warm it up, melt it, shove a load of ingredients in, shove it in the oven, and then we've just got, it's just really lovely, special thing to have in the mornings. And then I think it also does probably work out cheaper, but probably only just. Things like porridge, I still don't quite understand why packets exist. I kind of understand if you're going travelling or you have your porridge at work and you need it in like a transportation thing, but my Swedish grandmother has always made porridge in the microwave, so it's super duper. It's much cleaner to clean up, because I think that's probably some people's like reticence with not doing it another way. But yeah, porridge is so easy. I have probably got a recipe on my blog for perfect porridge. I'd be surprised if I didn't have at least one. And then something like tea. If you are a herbal tea drinker, there are so many free teas you can get out there that you can forage or you can grow yourself. That's something that I do. I also buy a lot of tea because I just love tea. I love pucker herbs teas. Those are some of my absolute favourites. They just do incredible blends. And although they're expensive, I just see that as a really lovely treat to myself at the end of a day, or the beginning of the day, or the middle of the day, or any time of day. Something like pancakes, again, that the mind boggles why some of those things exist, but I do understand pancakes are a really time intensive thing to do, but I absolutely love making pancakes. We make pancakes once a week at least, and it is a recipe that my dad taught me when I was really, really young for big fat English pancakes. Sometimes I add an extra egg to make it much more kind of crepe-like and a bit more sophisticated, but my kids absolutely love pancakes and spreading them with jam and rolling them up and eating them. And oh my gosh, yes, pancake morning is the best, but I am always standing by the oven, but it is one of my greatest joys is to stand by the oven cooking pancakes, because it's labor intensive, but at the same time really all you're doing is kind of standing there and pouring things and flipping things. Like it's not too taxing. But yeah, you don't really get to sit down and really enjoy the meal, because as the pancakes keep coming out, anyway, you get my point. If you've made pancakes, you don't really get to sit down a lot. Anyway, the other things that I make a lot are jams and chutneys. I do sometimes buy jams because I like to buy the St. Dalfour jams, which don't have sugar in them. They are very fruit sweetened. I really like those, but otherwise I make all my own jams. We make blackberry and apple jam. We make Taybury jam from the Tayberries we grow. Last year we made plum jam because some lovely guy in the local area said, would you like to come pick some plums? I've got loads of plums on my plum tree, because he saw I was picking blackberries, and that was very sweet. So we made a lot of plum jam. And chutney, like I said before, I love making my own runner bean chutney. And most years I've been growing my own runner beans, but I'm not doing that this year. I've given myself a chutney break. Other things are apple crumble, oven chips. Some of these like things that just require sort of one action, like cutting chips to shove them in the oven, maybe put a little bit of salt, pepper, olive oil on there, mix it together, shove it in the oven. I find just if that extra 10 minutes of effort means you get a much tastier and healthier product. And I'm quite particular about ingredients lists. I have to be checking nutritional information on things, and I know that most things have added bad salts, like, you know, not sea salt. I love sea salt, and I'm really particular about which oils I use on things. I much prefer to use olive oil or butter where I can. I think it digests much better. So anyway, now I'm going off on a tangent. I told you that would happen, didn't I? But there we go. So going back to, you want to slow down with your meals, but don't slow down to the point where all you're doing is spending time in the kitchen and preparing everything from scratch. I think that's bonkers. I think you have to have a real balance. If you have enough time and both of you are at home, for example, and you have plenty of time to do that and you really enjoy it and you relish it and it's part of your craftsmanship and creativity, go for it. I think that's absolutely wonderful, and enjoy sharing it with other people. But yes, if you are someone that doesn't have the time, please don't beat yourself up from not being able to get everything or make everything from scratch. And there is no shame in going to the supermarket. And if you can't make it to the farmer's market, or you can't afford the farmer's market, it really doesn't matter. Just do what you can to feed your family as well as you know how. Talking of which, there is just so much shame attached to cooking, or the lack of ability, and people think it gets really complicated, but cooking is a skill, and if you want to learn, you just need to keep practicing it. If you don't want to learn, that's also fine. Microwave meals exist for a reason, and that's okay. You can fast track your learning by watching people on YouTube, or extra fast track it by just going and doing some simple courses at a cookery school. Maybe ask for that for your next birthday or Christmas present. I think those are wonderful. Quite a lot of my enjoyment and excitement came when I did do some cookery courses when I was younger, when it was much cheaper. And there was a Waitrose cookery school around the corner from where I lived. Well, not around the corner. It was a bit of a drive, but, you know, that's sort of around the corner. And we'd go there and just watch them put together these incredible ingredients that you just, like, I'd never tasted things like that before. And they showed me different kinds of skills, and that was really wonderful. I guess that was probably between the ages of about 16 and 18. The course price was super low, and they wanted to get people in the door, and they did a really, really good job. It's a lot more expensive now to go to that same cookery school and do a course, like a lot more expensive. But I still think that would make a fantastic gift for anybody that you knew that was kind of like on the fence about cooking, because it's so amazing to learn from an enthusiastic chef that actually knows what to do, that you can ask those like questions to on, oh, how am I actually supposed to chop an onion? Or like, that sort of question. So don't beat yourself up. If you don't know something and you want to learn, that's okay. And if you don't want to learn, that's also okay. The world is really set up for everybody, and you shouldn't feel any shame either which way. So I kind of want to like sum up this section of the what I eat, and then talk about like the planning, favorite recipes, cookbook kind of thing. So I mostly eat whole foods. I check my ingredients lists, check there's no we don't eat nitrates in this house. So we get the nitrate-free bacon when we eat bacon. We try and avoid emulsifiers. We try and avoid anything that's not rapeseed oil, so other seed oils. We don't really eat those unless it's some kind of exception. Thankfully in Sainsbury's ingredients lists are still really amazing in comparison to most other supermarkets. So there's a little tip there for anyone in the UK listening. I would love to spend more time knowing where and how my food was grown. I do choose organic where I can in the supermarket, but I'm still really limited to supermarket just for the sake of cost. I did go to the farmer's market at the weekend actually, which is a first for a very, very long time. I went with my mum, and it was really, really expensive, but very nice to know that I was supporting local producers. So I think once in a while I probably will go and do that, but it was so expensive, and that's just not really in my budget. So if you have the money though, go for it. I think what a wonderful thing it is to support our local producers. Amazing. The other things I choose, I choose things that make my body happy. So I have like a little list of things that I try and avoid, or have to prepare in a certain way, or eat in a certain way, because I know that it just digests much better. So if I do eat pork, which doesn't happen very often, I eat it with a lot of sauerkraut. And I really try and avoid prawns because I've had too many bad experiences with prawns. And at the minute I'm trying to be gluten-free. It's going mostly well, and my body does seem to be happy with that as well. I've also been mostly dairy-free for a really long time. In my early 20s, I had really bad acne, which had never happened in my teenage years. And I found that cutting out dairy was the key, and all my acne completely cleared up. I didn't need any kind of topical product, really. I just needed to not eat dairy and crisps, kind of cooked oils and things like that. Really, anything deep fried always used to make me break out, and still does to this day. If I drink milk, which I never do, but if I did drink milk, I would end up with a spot on my face. Or if I ate a packet of crisps, I'll have a spot on my face the following day. The two are inextricably linked, apparently, to my face. And so, yeah, my microbiome is unique in that way, and I am jealous of anyone that can eat as much cheese as they like, really. So I do occasionally eat goat's cheese and sheep's cheese, and sometimes a Greek yogurt, because those are like just my absolute favourite things, and they do seem to digest better and not make me break out. But yeah, anyway, thought that was worth mentioning. If anyone out there is suffering from acne, it could be a really quick fix. An irritating fix sometimes, but I mean, so much better than shoving any kind of chemicals on your face to try and fix it. The other thing that I have been doing lately and really enjoying is eating in a kind of Ayurvedic kind of way, and learning a lot about that ancient way of looking after your body. And most things in Ayurvedic eating are really, really simple to take on board. Things like actually chewing your food properly, sitting down to eat, being really intentional about connecting with your food, eating it properly, not being distracted, so that you make sure you eat just the right amount. For me, I love to eat warm and nourishing foods. They really digest super well. I try and steer clear of cold drinks with my food because I find that really messes things up. I go with hydrating, comforting foods that are very liquidy, and if they're not, so last night, for example, I had some kind of like mixed, kind of like a chow mein kind of thing that I made with a side of miso soup, so that everything was hot, but then it was also like liquidy and nourishing. I do try and include some kind of fermented foods in what I'm eating, because I just think that helps everything digest a lot better. And like I said, I reduce any kind of like ice cold foods and beverages, just so that my digestion can be functioning as well as it can. So I found a lot of really helpful advice in the kind of Ayurvedic eating kind of world. And yeah, I'm just trying to take like ownership of what I'm eating and not be swayed by other people. So although I follow a few people on Instagram, I actually was having a look to kind of share with you who I'm following on Instagram that I could share with you and inspire you with. And really, there's actually only two. I've followed lots of people in the past, and I just find that it can be very triggering what they eat, and it can be really triggering if they're making complicated things or expensive things, or like there's too many sweet things. For example, for me with my diabetes, that's not very helpful. So I do tend to follow, only two, kind of three. So I'm going to share these with you. 5 o'clock Apron is my absolute favourite Instagrammer. She does these little reels of vegetable-based savoury foods most of the time, and lots of real English kind of things. And I'm obsessed with her. She makes it seem very easy, and anytime I've followed something that she's made, it's gone really, really well. And it's helpful that you can kind of see the whole process. And it's always really yummy combinations. You can tell she's really got her head in the game as to amazing flavours, but that isn't costing the earth or really needing too many extra ingredients. And the other one I love is Frenchfamilyfood. It's also very, very simple, often savoury. And I'm really, really always inspired by the colours that she puts on her plate. But yeah, how easy it looks to put together, really. So those are my two that I love. I also really love Ellen Fisher. I love how she feeds her family. Although she's 100% vegan, which I am not, I find a lot of her recipes are amazing. And I've got one of her cookbooks that I've printed out. But yeah, I really love the way that she eats, and I like the way that she shares it as well. Okay, so I probably need to round out the segment of the history of exact details of what I eat. I probably just shared far too much personal information with you. But there we go. Now you know every inch of what I eat and why. And I hope that doesn't come across like I'm a fussy eater, because I would definitely not call myself a fussy eater. I'm pretty easy to cater for. I'll eat anything you put in front of me. And if it's got too many carbs, I'll just inject more. And if it's got pork, I'll still eat it, and then I'll just deal with the consequences. And the same with anything. I'll just eat whatever's in front of me. And I love to travel and try new foods. And sometimes it's a bit of fun and games trying to work out how many carbohydrates are in something and how much fat and all those sort of things I have to calculate for my diabetes. But I love food, and I hope that's come across. So let's move into the nitty-gritty of how I plan and prep and budget and organise the food in our house. So this has had to change over the years, and I think that's quite right. If you feel frustrated that you have to create a new menu plan or a new way of planning or a new way of organising every season or every couple of weeks even, know that I understand how you feel. I get very frustrated, or in the past I've got really frustrated with how I do this. I feel at the minute I'm in a really good space with it not feeling too overwhelming, and I hope that the way that I do things I'm going to share with you today is really, really helpful for you. So the way that I currently do things is that I have this kind of rolling menu plan that is quite broad, but that covers every single meal in every single day. And I will do an online shop every week. Sometimes I have to do top-up shops or go to different shops than the Sainsbury's order that I get. But I stick to this kind of rolling menu plan. So I'm going to tell you what it is. You can grab a pen or paper, but I'll also make this available on my blog so that you can have it as a download. So on a Monday, sometimes these move around, but so long as I've kind of planned for them and I've got all the ingredients in, because that used to be my problem. I would organise for all the dinners, but then I would forget that, I need to eat lunch, or we need to make sure we've got enough eggs for breakfast times and things like that. So now I make sure that everything is covered, so I don't need to do top-up shops if I've done it well. So Monday, we have omelette for breakfast, beans on toast for lunch, and some kind of curry for dinner. That can be any kind of curry. Vegetable curry, a meat curry, a Thai curry, an Indian curry. You get my gist. Tuesday is porridge and or smoothie kind of a morning. Quiche for lunch, and Italian kind of food for dinner. Again, that can be pasta or pizza. It's very wide open so that I can feel as creative as I like or as uncreative as I like. And all of these allow also for me to go, do you know what? Today, I really don't feel like cooking. I'm just going to go and grab a pizza from the shop, frozen pizza, and shove it in the oven. Totally okay. On a Wednesday, it's egg and toast for breakfast, gyoza for lunch because I love getting gyoza from the shops. They're frozen and they take 3 minutes to prepare. So on a weekday lunchtime, I don't really want to spend loads of time preparing. And then fish and chips for dinner. Again, fish and chips is something that's quite flexible and really it doesn't mean the standard fish and chips. It just means some kind of fish prepared in some way with some kind of potato. And most of the time that's some kind of baked oven chip with some kind of butter fried fish rather than a battered piece of fish. Then on a Thursday, we start the day with a birch muesli. If you don't know what birch muesli is, it's actually one of the most popular recipes that I've ever put on my blog, one of the most popular blog posts. It's such a wonderful make-ahead breakfast. You could eat it every single morning. It's kind of like yogurt mixed with grated apple, mixed with lemon juice and oats and cinnamon and what's the last thing? Sultanas or raisins. And I'm feeling like there's something else in there, but I don't know what it is. But anyway, you combine all those things and something magical happens with the cinnamon and the lemon juice. That creates this kind of amazing flavour. And then the apples kind of release their juice and that all gets lovely and sweet. And with quantities of yogurt, it's just incredible. I often make it with a coconut milk yogurt. It's so nice. Anyway. Love birch muesli, lovely with a sliced banana on the top as well. The kids go through phases of thinking that it's a great thing and not a great thing. I think it's definitely more of a summer breakfast because it comes cold from the fridge and they're often more of a hot breakfast kind of kids. But I think it definitely is, it's coming into its own at the moment. Then we have more quiche for lunch and Japanese or Oriental kind of food for dinner. Often we're in a bit of a Japanese mood at the minute. I've got a fantastic new cookbook. We borrowed loads of Japanese cookbooks from the library recently and I kind of picked my favourite and bought it so that we have that as reference in the house. But this kind of comes from, I watched this incredible Netflix programme called the Makanai, which if you haven't watched it, I would hugely recommend, especially if you're a foodie. It is about the Makanai in a Maiko house and every episode has different foods in it and it's very gently paced and it's just making me want to watch it all over again. For the longest time as a family, we were making sushi every week and sushi is actually really easy to do yourself. You can pretty much get most of the ingredients at your local supermarket and all you need is a rolling mat, which you can get pretty cheap. And it's such a lovely thing to do together as a family because it's a job for every single person. And what we usually do is we do the rice all together, obviously, and then I make all the different fillings that you put in. So usually I'll make a tuna mayonnaise, slice some cucumbers really thin, usually make some kind of egg-based kind of omelette type thing, but in a pan in the oven, and slice that up, maybe some spring onions, some grated carrot, and then the kids kind of make their own. And then it's just a lovely way of kids being involved in the kitchen from a really young age, and everyone really enjoys eating it. It's also it's really good summer food, obviously, because it's cold, you can make most of it in advance. Anyhow, so we have been making sushi for such a long time and we thought we'd branch out into other Japanese foods. So my first recommendation for a cookbook therefore is Atsuko Aikida's Japanese Kitchen, Home Cooked Comfort Food Made Simple. If you want to kind of get a little bit more into home cooked Japanese food that isn't just sushi, then this is a fantastic one. She shows you how to do so many of the basic things, explains a lot of the food culture, and of all the books I borrowed from the library, this was by far the best kind of family book, and kind of it's obviously got some different ingredients that would be a bit more complicated to find, but a lot of it was quite basic and easy to do at home. And as someone who loves kind of taking recipes and kind of changing them for myself, I just think this one was the best one and seemed the most whole food based as well. Anyway, so huge recommendation there is the Atsuko's Japanese Kitchen. Okay, getting back to the plan. So on a Friday, we have granola or frozen pastries. Sainsbury's do a fabulous frozen pastry that's actually made with butter, which is a huge deal for me. And why would you have a French pastry if it wasn't made with butter? It just doesn't make any sense to me. Or we have granola and yogurt, depending on how the kids are feeling. Fridays can sometimes be quite fraught, and sometimes you want it to be really easy. Both of those things are really, really easy. Lunch is soup and dinner is Mexican. We love Mexican food in this family. We love a bit of spice, and I love how with Mexican food you can kind of shove everything on the table and let everyone at it, basically. And it's usually really easy to prepare, either like a meat dish or a bean dish, and then like some grated cheese, maybe some chopped tomatoes, some chopped lettuce. My son absolutely loves rolling out and frying his own homemade tortillas. Again, that's super easy. You only need about half an hour in advance to have thought about making the dough, and then you can just roll it out and fry it. And it's so lovely having your own homemade tortillas. Probably I'm not the best maker of tortillas, but it doesn't really matter. Everyone eats them anyway. Then on Saturday we have Dutch baby or pancakes. Often we're out for lunch, so I've just written out. If we're not out, then we're having leftovers or something like that. There's usually more food left in the fridge. And Saturday night is tapas night. Again, we really love tapas. Tapas, again, is a bit like the Mexican night in that you have these little pots on the table, in the middle of the table, that you can kind of take what you like from, and is usually kind of like take it from the fridge, bung it on the table, maybe shove a few things in the oven. So this week in my order I've got coming like some potato croquettes, some chorizo with no nitrates in, there'll be some fresh tomatoes, manchego cheese, we've always got some quince jam in the fridge, probably some kind of boiled eggs, very, very simple. Oh, probably also some kind of potato kind of egg dish, or potato with tomato sauce dish. Anyway, super duper easy, always very delicious, goes down very well. And then Sunday is usually eggs for breakfast, roast dinner for lunch, and I say jacket potatoes for dinner, but I'm sure we never have jacket potatoes for dinner. We usually have leftover roast dinner in some kind of format, because there's usually some left. It depends on the size of the kind of meat that I've got for that day. And then the other thing I do write down on my menu plan is a couple of desserts and a couple of snacks, because I worked out that if I don't write those down, then I end up going out to buy ingredients to make them. So if I've thought about them in advance, that usually works really well. So something like desserts will usually be something very simple, like an apple crumble and a rice pudding. And then snacks mostly means sweet snacks, sometimes savoury. I've usually made sure I've got like, the kids mostly snack on something like cheese and apples. They don't really snack on crisps because I don't let them. They go crazy with crisps, so we don't usually keep them in the house. We usually keep those as a special snack for travel or outside the house. So snacks are often far breton, which again, if you don't know what far breton is, I would hugely recommend that. It's so easy to make. You sort of make a custard, chill it in the fridge. You put some prunes in a pan with some Armagnac or brandy and let that kind of soak it all up for like half an hour or so on the hob. Leave it till it cools, spread that in a pan, pour the custard over the top and bake it. So it's just a baked custard but with these prunes in. My kids go through phases. Sometimes they'll only eat the prunes and sometimes they'll only eat the custard. Sometimes they'll eat the whole thing in one go, but adults absolutely love it. It's quite easy to make it gluten-free. And it's got loads of protein in it because it's got eggs and milk in it, although we do make it with non-dairy milk. And it's just beautiful. I make it with coconut sugar as well instead of regular sugar, and it is gorgeous. I should probably put that recipe, my kind of edited version of my recipe, up on my blog so that you guys can access it. I really think it's an underrated snack. Anyway, I like making my own homemade sausage rolls, my own homemade pastry. Sometimes I'll make a huge batch and put them in the freezer. They never seem to last very long. Flapjack is also something that's really easy to make that everyone really likes. So that is the menu plan. Now, often I will kind of have to adjust exactly what I'm making for times on that day. So I will always look in advance at the weather of the week and at what's in my plan for the week. I actually keep a physical diary. It's a big yellow A4 one that I can lay flat. And so I can see what's coming up that week. Sometimes it's only beavers and swimming and a haircut on Saturday, which I think is pretty much what's going on this week. Other times it's a lot busier than that. And then I have to make sure that the menu plan really fits in with that. I've thought about, it would be good if I've prepared something in advance that day because actually I've got to be out the whole day. Or, there's a day here where actually I could make something a little bit more complicated. And it's really nice to have thought that all the way through all of the details of everything so that you don't run into roadblocks. And I also include the weather because actually, if it's a really rainy day, we might want something more comforting that day. And if it's a really sunny day, maybe we'll want to eat outside or maybe we'll want to barbecue. So I really try and take all those things into consideration so I'm not really surprised by anything. And yeah, that is the menu plan. I do have some things that I have as time-saving things. So I often keep a pizza in the freezer. That's just sensible when you've got kids. Although often I'll eat a gluten-free pizza and share it with my daughter on a Friday or something like that for lunch. I always have frozen fruit and vegetables in my freezer. In fact, I think my freezer is probably half full of frozen fruits and vegetables. That is an amazing thing about modern technology that can be purchased and kept, and I like to take full advantage of that wonderful thing of the modern day. Also keep bread in the freezer ready sliced so that can just go straight in the toaster. Thank goodness for toasters. We have one of those fabulous toasters. If you're ever looking for a new toaster, I shall have to share that one day. It's like one of those Dualit ones. It's more expensive, but in theory, it should never break. And if it does, you can easily replace parts on it and it makes just perfect toast. I think we got it as a gift several years ago. Still looks wonderfully new and I love it to pieces. So a good toaster, always a good thing. Eggs are always a really good standby option for us. Great protein, always fills everybody up. Baked potatoes, I love the ability to just shove them in the oven, take them out, put some beans and butter in. Always a really quick, easy go-to. Fish in butter for me is also, again, that takes about 5 to 10 minutes to kind of just get that all cooked and on the table with a few frozen vegetables warmed up. Done. Anything in the slow cooker for me also counts as a quick time saver because in the morning just shove in a load of stuff and by the end of the day you've got something extremely yummy. I always get really sad for about the 3 months of the year where it's too hot to have the slow cooker on. Probably 2 months of the year, let's be realistic, where it's too hot to have a slow cooker on in the kitchen. And the other thing is egg fried rice. Super easy to do or make, or really anything with rice we really appreciate. So now I'm going to talk through some of my favourite cookbooks. I have got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 to share with you, and I've already shared another one, so technically that's 7. But I really do love cookbooks. I have quite a few more than 7 cookbooks. I'm not like a crazy cookbook hoarder. If I get them and I use only one recipe, I will take the photo of that recipe, print it out, add it to a big folder that I've got. I've actually got 2 folders. I've got one for sweet and one for savoury. Lever arch files, I should say. They are full, and I go through them often to get rid of recipes I'm never going to use and fill them with ones I love and want to reference often. Anyway, so if I get a cookbook and there's really only one recipe that I find myself using, I will take a photo, print it, and put it in this recipe folder, and I will resell that book. But there are certain cookbooks that to me are just necessary and I reference all of the time. Sometimes it's for the actual recipes themselves, and some of it's just for the inspiration that I feel to cook. Cookbooks are absolutely wonderful for that because lots of them just chat through how the person's feeling, and then they give you a certain feeling about the food and this kind of just energy to cook. So the first cookbook I'm going to share with you is the first cookbook I ever properly fell in love with. I've made lots of recipes from it, but it's the cookbook that I still to this day will pick up the most when I really just need to be inspired. And it is Falling Cloudberries from Tessa Kiros. Kiros spelled Kiros. She is a phenomenal writer, great recipes, beautiful photography. She's got a few different recipe books out there. I only own one other one, which is Apples for Jam, which I also really, really love. It's a great one for kids, and it's set out by colour, which I think is a really unique way of doing it. But this one is set out. It's to do with her different family recipes. So it's different parts of the world. Finland, Greece, Cyprus, South Africa, Italy, and then just sort of lots of other countries thrown in there at the end. And she's got some really amazing recipes. I think I really fell in love with the Greek section. I make a lot like the baked butter beans with onions, tomatoes and parsley. She's got a lovely moussaka recipe in here. She's got a lovely recipe for cinnamon cardamom buns in the Finnish section. And just honestly, every time I pick it up, I just want to eat all of it. The photography is incredible, and it's not just photographs of the food. It's very rustic and homey and lovely. So that is one that I go back to again and again and again. The second book relates to a TV series I watched back in 2010, which was called Delicious Miss Dahl. And that was incredible to me. Not only is Sophie Dahl taller than me, which is a bit of a thing because I'm almost 6 foot tall, she also talks so similarly to me about food that I felt some kind of kinship with her. And the way that she talks about each recipe is so amazing. So I bought the book Miss Dahl's Voluptuous Delights by Sophie Dahl, and it is amazing. I have cooked almost everything in this recipe book, and I reference this one all the time. They're very simple recipes to put together, but the flavours are absolutely spot on. A couple of the recipes I love are her flapjack recipe. I've used that predominantly as my flapjack recipe for a very long time. She's got a aubergine parmigiana, which is the one I use all the time, a brown rice risotto, which is just to die for. It is just absolutely beautiful, and I would highly recommend that you check that one out from your local library if they've got it. It's absolutely stunning. Okay, should we wax lyrical about Jamie Oliver for a while, because I think it's probably about high time that we do. I love Jamie. I think that he has been such a significant person in the food world in terms of eating healthy food in a healthy way, and really enjoying it. And I think he changed a lot of people's opinion of cooking and food. Anyway, my absolute favourite Jamie book is Jamie's 30-Minute Meals. I adore the way he sets out this book. I adore how he sets out as full meals with sides and desserts, and he balances all the flavours and textures. And I constantly go back to that book for cooking for the family. And I love the way that he also does this, shove it all on the table and make it so people can put what they want on their plate, try a little bit of different textures and flavours. And especially with young children, I think one of the really key things for kids is to let them experience lots of different textures and flavours from a young age, so that when they're going through those fussy like years 3 to 6, that then, or fussy in inverted commas, that the more flavours and textures they've experienced before then, the more they'll come back to afterwards. So anyhow, I've never really believed in kid food, and I just do this sort of like, I'll shove it all on the table and you will find something that you like, I promise. So Jamie's 30-Minute Meals is incredible for that. There's lots of combinations that I come back to a lot. There's certain ones where I'll just use the dessert or I'll just use the side. And anyway, always incredible and always inspiring. Everybody needs in their cookbook arsenal a kind of recipe book that covers a lot of basic things that you know you can go to and it will answer the question that you have. And that for me is Sarah Raven's Food for Friends and Family. I actually used to work for Sarah Raven back in the day before kids, and it was a wonderful company to work for. And I went to her house and I used to film her creating recipes and eat the food, and It was absolutely gorgeous. And again, she's a person that will put together quite simple ingredients and it will taste somehow amazing. The pairings that she does just blow your socks off. So this book in particular is set out by season. Quite a lot of my recipe books are set out by season because I do like to cook that way, show the kids what's in season, give them an understanding of the flow of the natural world when it comes to food. I love how she's got in here some preserves as well. So if I need a piccalilli recipe, this is a good place to come. She's got just beautiful things like bay leaf ice cream and duck curry. I love duck curry, by the way. And she's got a whole load of different soups, like watercress soups. She'll do elderflower jellies and just really incredible things. Actually, this week my meal plan is mostly based out of this book because it's just been a little while since I picked it up, and I just am absolutely in love with it. We made out of this book as well recently the Queen of Puddings. Have you ever had a Queen of Puddings? It's like mind-blowing. It's got this sort of like custard with what's it called, breadcrumbs. So you put breadcrumbs in the bottom and then like a custard on the top, and you let that you cook it and you let it sit. I actually put it in the fridge overnight. Then you put a little bit of jam over the top, and then you put meringue over that and bake it again. And that is quite the thing. Super easy, very cheap, but there is a reason it's called Queen of Puddings. Anyway, that's in this recipe book and it is absolutely gorgeous. So I'd really recommend that one. She's got quite a few other ones, but this one is by far my favourite. And then the last two I'm going to share with you are a bit more kind of specialist. So one is about American food and the other is about Ukrainian food. And the American food one is called As American as Apple Pie, and it is by, let me open it up, Philip Stephen Schultz. It is absolutely beautiful. It was published in 1990 and it's got sections for every famous or popular American food item. So it's got apple pies, baked beans, chilies, chocolate chip cookies, how to make all these things basically perfectly. Some of the ingredients I have to sub for in England, but that's fine. It's got fried chicken, meatloaf, pancakes, pot pies, waffles. It's a really lovely book I actually reach for all the time because a lot of that is very kid-friendly food, and these recipes have all of the details. I think quite often when in the UK, if you were to go to like BBC Good Food, which I do a lot, and look at those recipes, you wouldn't have half the ingredients that are in them and they wouldn't taste as good as they do from this recipe book. And then the other one is Summer Kitchens by Olia Hercules, which probably needs no introduction, but it is a fabulous, very dense recipe book full of Ukrainian food. And the recipe that I make from here most often is there's like a poppy seed sourdough babka recipe, which is just made with sourdough, naturally leavened, and it is incredible. It's like a kind of brioche thing, and I often make it actually with like a cinnamon filling instead of the poppy seed nut one, although that one is also very delicious. Anyway, the whole book is a real love letter to Ukrainian food, and I just think, especially in the times we live in, I think it's a very lovely thing to be able to have a culture memorized in that way through food. So huge fan of that one, would hugely recommend. Okay, we're coming up to almost a whole hour of me talking about food, which is not a surprise, and there's a reason why I chose this to be the first podcast, because there's just so much that I could continue to say. So I'm sure you guys have got questions, other things you'd like me to cover, so please send me a DM at the English Homemaker or a comment on one of the posts. Then I will hopefully be able to cobble together a kind of Q&A about food and about the kitchen and about eating and about planning and organising. I didn't really touch on budgeting today, so as well that could be another question. I'm definitely going to do a whole episode about budget in general to do with homemaking, so perhaps I could include it there. Anyhow, I hope it was a useful podcast so that you have a bit of an overview of how we eat and why we eat, and hopefully a few little tips thrown in there as well. And I just want to round out this podcast by ending as I started, with those words from Morgan Harper Nichols. Words to repeat to yourself. I am open to learning from others while allowing my own journey through life to unfold naturally. which means I hope you've listened and learned something from this podcast, but you certainly don't need to take everything I've said and apply it to your own life. Take a little bit, take nothing, just have enjoyed listening to me. I really, really appreciate the time you've spent listening to me today. I hope I have inspired you and encouraged you, and I'm really, really grateful that you've been here with me. Have a really great rest of your day. Bye.